Hey everybody, we've got together today four of the greatest experts out there in LinkedIn YouTube land. We've got Mario Estrada, Dave Ballavoni, Steve Kraynak, and Monica K. Royal. And today we're going to talk about ChatGPT and some AI stuff. I did a project recently where I recreated an old computer game called Minesweeper on Excel, and I used ChatGPT to do it. So we're going to go through how we did that and then talk about some more applications of ChatGPT. So what I'd like to do first is have everybody introduce themselves though. So I'm going to share my screen now and let everybody give themselves an introduction. So we will start with Dave.
Hey, I'm Dave Ballavoni, work for myself at DB Data Solutions. I cater to small and mid-sized businesses who really don't like Excel, but they need it for their business. I tend to take a different approach to Excel than most people. I'm a master with a single formula is good.
Awesome. Monica.
Hello, I'm Monica K. Royal. I work for myself as well. My company is called Nerd Nourishment. I am nourishing the brains of nerds out there, specifically people that are trying to transition from their current jobs into a data career. And I love to talk about all nerdy things, specifically around data and security. And fun fact, I like to make things fun and relatable.
All right. Mario Estrada, you're up.
Hi everybody, Mario Estrada. I've recently started my company and a YouTube channel called Hot Sheets. The whole purpose of it being to bring together three things that I really love, which is Excel, data, and teaching. And my real aim is like the everyday professional, the person who isn't trying to be a data scientist, but just has to work with numbers on a daily basis that comes in the form of Excel to get you to a point where you feel really good about your ability to manage that information. So I do that through really engaging visual videos that help you build intuition without like a ton of technical jargon, just for everyday professional.
All right. Thanks, Mario. And Steve.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Kraynak. I work for a company called someproduct.com. It was initially based in Australia, and now we're trying to expand here to the US. Prior to that, up until about 9 months ago, I worked on the Excel engineering team at Microsoft, and now I'm in the world of consulting and training. That's what we specialize in at Some Product. We help companies large and small to just be more efficient and more effective and be more capable using Excel. We recently had a project where we took our company's project workload down from 1 week to just 1 hour using some basic tools. So it's really powerful what you can do. Fun fact for me, working at Microsoft, one of the really cool things I got to work on in Excel was adding some new functions. So if you've ever used ifs and text join, I'd like to feel like I helped you out a little bit there. And one thing I like to tell people about Excel is just that it can be done. So there's so many hard problems, but generally you can solve pretty much any problem in Excel. So keep an open mind about it. So,
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys for introducing yourselves and for joining me in my little launch of this video today. One other thing I do want to share about all these people, if you're not following, definitely do that as soon as you watch this video to the end, but go follow them. Every one of these people on this webinar with me, they don't know it yet, but they've given me extreme bouts of imposter syndrome when I've talked to them or seen their product or the stuff they do. So go check them out. There's a lot of good stuff on all their channels. So let me get to it now. I had this idea a couple months ago. There's an old game from the 80s or 90s, I think, that came with Windows called Minesweeper. And it's kind of like a battleship type game where you have a grid of tiles and randomly there's bombs hidden under these tiles. And so you have to do a couple clicks, but if you click on it, if it's a bomb, your game's over. If you don't, you'll either get a number or a blank. And the number is the amount of bombs that are touching that particular point. So right here, I've got a 2. There's a bomb here and a bomb here. And then a 1, because only one bomb is touching this one. There's a 5, so that means there's 5 bombs around this grid here. The other thing you do is you mark them with a flag to tell you that that's the bomb, because the way you win is to uncover every tile that's not a bomb. So I just looked at it and I was like, there's some really cool elements of programming and development here. Let me see if I can do it in Excel. And then about 3 weeks ago, I said, instead of me programming it, why don't I see what happens with ChatGPT? And to my delight and surprise, it was amazing. I still had to organize my thoughts and the approach, but ChatGPT wrote all the code really quickly. There's very few edits. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and rebuild the Minesweeper game that I built and see how fast we can do it in ChatGPT. Any thoughts before I move on?
I don't think it's going to work.
But it can be done, guy. Fires the first shot.
Yeah, it can be done.
Okay, so in the beginning, when I was thinking of doing it myself, I kind of had a workflow. Like, first thing I got to do is I got to create a framework for this game. How do I set up the parameters and the game grid and everything? And then the next step was putting the bombs in the grid, and then setting up the numbers, and then cycling the hints. You'll see I've got in my hints, you can either mark it as a bomb or a flag, which is a question mark. And then how do I uncover the cells in Excel? How do I simulate that? And then the last thing was to check the game status. And that's important. So every time you uncover a tile, you have to check the game status as well. So that's kind of the approach I took going into it. And I just included this quote here at the end because I'm a big Walt Disney fan too. The easiest way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. So I better start doing that now. Give me just a second to switch over and bring up Excel, and we will build Minesweeper from scratch.
I love that quote. I need to stop thinking.
Your quote, yours is what?
I need to stop thinking and start doing.
All right, so now I am ready to get started here. Where is my share screen again? There we go. So I've brought up ChatGPT, and right now I am just using the free version. And one of the things I wanted to show you guys that I learned about using ChatGPT in doing this project is that even in the free version, ChatGPT saves threads. So whatever you start your project with will be the name of the thread over there on the left, and it will save every prompt you make, and you can just, in that thread, you can just reference like, hey, here's this big long thing I did, and the next prompt can be, oh, can you just change that and make it do one more row? You can kind of have iterative on top of the other prompt, and that was kind of interesting too. But you can also go back and continue a thread later, and it instantly remembers everything you did, and that's really cool to me. So I'm going to start a brand new chat, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name my thread. And just do that in a colon. It'll give me a quote, but it also will give me a new chat. And I'll rename this too. Just have to do it there. Okay. For the first step that I have to do is I have to do my setup. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my prompt in here and kind of explain what I'm asking it to do. We want to write VBA code. And what we want to do is search a workbook for these two tabs. I want the Minesweeper tab and Minesweeper Hidden. The way in my mind I set this up is Minesweeper Hidden has all the bombs and the numbers in it, and then the Minesweeper tab has all of your gameplay. And you'll reference one from the other as you're playing the game. So I just gave it the parameters. Look for these worksheet tabs. If they don't exist, create them. On each worksheet, set up a 15 by 15 named range of cells. Start the range on D10. On the Minesweeper tab, the range name should be range Minesweeper, and on the Minesweeper Hidden tab, it should be Minesweeper Hidden. Lastly, the cells in each range should be sized so they appear as squares. I just threw that in there because it's really annoying to sit there and resize everything, so chat can do it for me. So let's just see it do that first piece of code there. And it's writing my VBA code. Fun fact, if you don't tell what code to write, it usually writes Python. So... Not too shocking there.
But just to clarify here, you're not using any special GPT on this. It's just the standard one. Right?
This is the straight out of the box. I'm poor. I can't afford to buy anything. ChatGPT. Yeah. So then to do the code, I took all this code, and if you guys look into this, You're not going to see anything that's super rocket science. We all would have done it, but it would take you longer to logically put it together and everything. So copy the code, and I'll go over to Excel, to VBA, make myself a new module, and paste that code in there. One other thing I am going to do before I start is I have to make a main routine. That's going to be called when I start a new game. I'm going to call this first. So every routine I make, we're going to put in that main routine. It'll call them one after another. So let's just run this setup and see what it does. Click run. And I come over here. And here's my Minesweeper hidden tab. Here's my Minesweeper tab. Here's my ranges it's set up. My range hidden. So, boom. Like, I've got my framework set up now.
Your squares and
And it sized them right. So the next step on the Minesweeper hidden, I have to generate 25 random bombs to put on there somewhere. So this is an incredibly easy prompt. I'll just grab it.
The next step, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go.
So when you did your first prompt and you got back the output, did you just copy paste it into Excel and run it and then see if it worked? Or did you kind of like read the script first and then say like, okay, I think this should work?
No, I just threw it in there. I just like went for it to see what it would do.
Okay.
I've done a couple little VBA things with ChatGPT before, so I knew I wouldn't wreck anything, but you know, I wanted to see kind of what it came up with, and I did great. One other thing is you iterate a lot of times if you start this over. Sometimes it'll approach the code just slightly differently, which is interesting. Like it'll approach things differently, like finding out if the tabs are there or not. But you know, as Dave and I have said many times, if it works, it works. So let me go back to chat.
How many times do you have to tweak your prompt to get to do what you wanted?
I really didn't tweak these very much at all. Now, granted, I had an idea in my head of what I needed it to do because I was thinking about doing it myself. So that first prompt was kind of detailed. Like one of the big things that I did, the first time I did this, I didn't have the prompt size the squares. So once it did it, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I didn't have to resize this myself. So I went in there and it just threw it in there. And so down here, resize cells to appear as a square. And look at this. It even comments your code.
Yeah.
So that's pretty non-existent for most people these days.
It would be nice if it could tell you that you forgot to ask for grid lines to be turned off and have borders put around it.
Well, a couple of those things did happen, and you know, so I've consolidated them, and I've got good prompts now. But you know, everything did pretty close to what I wanted it to the first cut. I just had to do a few little tweaks here and there. So the next one, plant the bombs. Randomly place 25 capital M's in range Minesweeper hidden. Ensure that none are placed on top of each other. You know, that last part wasn't a prompt tweak because when I first said it, the first time it came back, I only had like 21 bombs because it was randomly putting them on the grid, and sometimes it would put it over another one. So I just had to add that line. When you randomize it, make sure you don't put it on something that's already there. Does anybody have any idea why I just chose a capital M to represent a bomb?
It's a mine.
The capital M is actually a bomb icon in the Wingdings font. So I had to go search that out myself, and then when you make it look like a bomb, it'll change the font of that cell just to Wingdings.
That makes sense.
So here's writing my bombs placed. And then look how it did it. It set up a counter. So check if the cell is empty. So if the cell value is not equal to M, then place a bomb and increment my bomb counter. Otherwise, it'll just cycle through again and place another bomb down there. So This is number 2. I think we only have like 5 before this program's built. So go down here, place bombs. I will add this to my sub main, and we'll go ahead and run that. There you go, 25 bombs, and the Minesweeper tab isn't there. So ultimately at the end too, this is live for everybody to see it, but ultimately at the end, we would very hide this Minesweeper hidden tab so nobody could see it, obviously. Okay, now this is the really cool one. Now that the mines are there, I have to put a number in every cell representing how many of the cells touching it have a bomb in it. So let's go to the prompt. Count the bombs of each cell. For each cell in Minesweeper hidden where there is not a bomb, count the number of cells surrounding the target cell that have an M in them. Put this total in the cell. If there are none, populate with a 0. So I'm basically just describing the Minesweeper game to ChatGPT. Yeah, I'm kind of just going through what the rules are.
Now, be honest, Mario, you were thinking about how did I program that in VBA?
I was going to say, I am not, I don't know that I've actually ever built a program in VBA. I've done things like Google Apps scripts. What I love about this is like, you're just explaining in words that you would use, like the rules of the game, and little annotations, like kind of help guide you. Yeah, I get enough of a sense where I kind of know what's going on, but still feel confident it's going to work.
Well, this is, I want to just segue for a second and talk about this tool, because there's a lot of people out there right now who are kind of skeptical on ChatGPT and if you should use it or not. And I did computer science in school. And I'm old, so I was right on the cusp of learning assembly language and punch cards. But we had other languages, we had like Pascal and Fortran, and just started with C. And what the professor said is, hey, all these languages, they write the assembly language. So you don't even have to learn that anymore. And I think this is just that next iteration. Honestly, I still like to code, but we're going to get to that point where we can just describe something and the computer's going to do it for us. And I don't think that's cheating. I think that's using the next level of tools, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's cheating either, because you have to be able to describe it in a way that it will understand it.
Yeah.
You might know when I'm explaining game rules to people, they're like, what?
Yeah, so you do kind of have to logically think about how to explain every little aspect of this. So now it's the count bombs. Now I'm going to put this up here, but now I'm going to do another little manual piece that I had to do. I'm going to go over to the Minesweeper tab, and I'm going to build one of my buttons. So I'm going to insert a button. Now I'll assign the macro to call my main routine. So now every time I want to start a new game, I just click that and it'll refresh the Minesweeper hidden tab. So that went through, and like I said, every time there's an M, or everywhere there's a number, there's a 3. There's an M there, there's an M there, there's an M there. So
is it because the M's are randomly generated that you get a new configuration, basically?
Yeah. Yep. So look, I'll just color this one here. That was a bomb, and this was a bomb. So if I click new, it's a random configuration again. So
it's pretty interesting to me that this is working, because I didn't see you describe anything about a reset. It just seemed like that first was to create the framework of it. But now that you already have a framework, it's just, I don't know, is it deleting those sheets and recreating them? It's that part's actually working.
it's running the exact same code. And like, if you got a coding purist, they might want to go in and clean it up and change things. But again, I was like, what if I just run the setup again? And it works, and it doesn't have a conflict with testing out the range name or the sheet tabs. Because like I said, in that sheet tab one, it looks to see if these tabs are here before it creates them. So there's no harm in just doing the whole process again. Do what, Dave?
Is it that first macro that clears things out to reset it?
Yeah. The next one, cycling the bomb hits. This one gets a little tricky. Copy and oops, I have to go to chat first. This is a routine. If you right click on it, it's going to cycle through putting a bomb on it, putting a flag, or nothing. And so I had to preface that by saying, and this is a style thing, I don't like a lot of code in my event routines. I want it in a separate module and then calling it from the event. But this routine will be called from an event and pass in a range parameter to designate which cell to act upon. So then I'm actually basing the gameplay on the color of the background of the cells. And I didn't like that as a programmer, but then I came back to it works. And there's no reason I'm going to change the color. So this routine will be called from an event and pass in a range parameter to designate which cell to act on. If the cell has a gray background, then do the following. If the cell is blank, then put a capital M and make the font wingdings. If it's an M, then put a capital P, because that's the flag, and make it wingdings. If it's P, then clear the contents of the cell and make the font Aptos narrow. And I actually am seeing I might have had an error in the first one. I thought I was supposed to turn those tiles gray, but we'll see what happens here.
Even a part of what's what happens, I think tells a lot about what working with the ChatGPT does to your workflow, just your ability to iterate, right? Let's try it. You'll find it.
So this one actually gave me two pieces of code. It gave me the code to cycle through those for the range Minesweeper, but then it also gave me the code to put in my event handler to call that. Call the handle cell action subroutine with the target range. So it's just passing it over there. And this, we'll have to modify this. So let me paste this first one in and then we'll modify the second one because I see where it did it differently. Okay, and then go back to chat and I have to go to the Minesweeper tab. And for those of you who want to learn more VBA, I'm going to say at the very minimum you can ping me or David. So hopefully that's okay, David. Who else? Oh, it's Steve too. So I'm going to use before the right click event, and then I will put my error handler in there. Get rid of the sub. Get rid of that. So when it wrote the generic error handler, it wasn't capturing what I clicked on. And so chat set up its own target range and said, hey, just grab A1. Here's something like it took its best shot. You know, it was a worthwhile effort. But when you do the right click, VBA is going to actually give you the cell you clicked on. So that's what we're going to use instead of what chat said. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I'll get rid of that. And the target range here, and this, and then cell action. I don't even have, it doesn't have to be target range, it's just target. So that will work except for, I'm not sure if I actually colored those cells gray. Nope, I didn't. This is actually going to be a really good example of how to fix this. I should be coloring that whole, on that Minesweeper tab, all those cells gray as I get started. But I didn't put that in my chat. So I can go back here and I can go back up to the original chat I made. Is it called Minesweeper game? Yeah, set up Minesweeper game. So that's the name of the routine. Watch what I'm going to do here. I could modify that. I can modify that script right here, but I'm going to do something. Well, let me just show you. I'll just show you how to do it here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that edit. That's it. And it'll just regenerate that code. Now, this is simple. We probably could have just added that code easily, but this is indicative of if you miss a big piece of logic, you can just throw it back on and it'll regenerate the code. Here's that last bit. Make background of cells in range Minesweeper gray. Range Minesweeper interior.color equals RGB, blah, blah, blah. So I can either copy this whole thing and paste back in. I'll just do that. Copy code, come back here, and
Should have had to add borders while you're at it.
you know what? I'm supposed to do that. Let's just do it before I paste it in there.
GPT should be smart enough to tell you forgot that.
I will say this though, the change you had to make to that event macro shows that it doesn't substitute for knowing what you're doing. It powers you, but it doesn't replace you.
It does all the busy work for you though.
Yes.
You know? But you still have to know a little bit about how they work. Exactly right. But yeah, Dave, there's a couple little things like that where I didn't quite get the nuance of what I was doing. So I had to tweak it a little, but very minimal. And it formats it awesome too. Like, all right, so set up Minesweeper game. And let's see what it did by just clicking our button over here. It's not like in that grid line command. So now's where I would debug and find out what it really is, but I'm not going to worry about this in this demo. So we'll leave grid lines on for this demo just to be expedient. Oops, what happened here? There we go. There's a grid. Now I set up the right click, so now if I right click, it should toggle through my flags. There's a bomb. And there's a flag. Here's another thing, Dave. Dave or Steve, you might know what's going on here. Any ideas?
Yeah, it seems like you need to cancel.
Exactly right. So again, this is a characteristic of that event. You can cancel the right click if you want, in for any reason. But what's happening is it's handling my cell action, and then it's dropping through and showing the shortcut menu of a right click because it captured before the right click. So if I set that cancel to true, that should take care of that. Bomb, flag, nothing. Bomb, flag, nothing. All right, so I'm getting there. All right, here's the big one, number 5 out of 6. So in this routine, this is the big logic routine. In this routine, we're going to uncover the cells. That's kind of for me. I'm just saying what I want to do. And then it'll accept a passed in range object. It's the cell to uncover. It's the one we clicked on. If the background of that cell is gray and the cell is in range Minesweeper, then continue this routine. So basically, if you double click on any cell outside the range, it's not going to run this. It's going to stop and quit running there. And the background has to be gray, so it'll do nothing if you've already uncovered that cell. Okay, now to uncover, copy the corresponding value from the Minesweeper hidden range to the target cell. That's it. I didn't have to like get all fancy and say, make sure you've counted the number of cells over in rows and columns. I just said, copy the same cell from my other range back over to the first one. So that's where I'm getting that number coming in. Okay? If the target cell is a bomb, then the game is over. Copy all the cells from Minesweeper hidden to range Minesweeper. It'll just uncover the board if you lose. If the target is a number and greater than 0, change the background to white. And now, if the target is 0, it's going to do 3 things, because 0 is the tricky one. That's where no bombs are touching it. So the way the Minesweeper game works is, if no bombs are touching it, you have to go sample every cell touching it until you get a number in that grid. I'll show you when we get it working. So I want to change the background color to white first, because remember, one of the things we're checking is that the background is gray. Then we're going to clear contents from that cell. So it was a 0, we're going to put nothing in there, so it doesn't show up as a 0. And then we're going to call the uncover cells routine again for every adjacent cell that is gray. I'll leave that a minute to sit in. So if I click on this cell and it's got a 0 in it, I'm going to uncover that cell. I'm going to change the background to white, but then I'm going to call that routine for every cell that's touching it to uncover that too until it's a number. And the tricky part is, again, if this cell is 0, it has to call it for every one of those surrounding it too. Does it kind of make sense? And the cool thing is, when you tell chat that, it just writes the code to do that. So, because this is kind of a little tricky recursive piece of code there.
One thing
What's
that's
interesting, I've done a lot of reading about how ChatGPT actually works, and to think about how much content there is in its training data about VBA, that it can just do this. It's actually amazing on 2 fronts. 1, that there's that much content out there. 2, that there's a system that can, just based on reading language, and then put this together, following your instructions.
Look how fast it did it. I mean, it's insane. So that whole tricky part, if the cell is greater than 0, then it's just going to change it to a white background. That's it, and show the number. If it's not, perform specified actions. It's going to change it to a white background, and that's key, because if you call it recursively, it won't recheck something multiple times. I was actually getting that first when I didn't have that there. It was giving me like a Stack Overflow, because it was like every time you tried to uncover every adjacent cell, it would re-uncover a cell you already did. But then call the uncover cells routine for adjacent cells with a gray background. So it's basically going, look at adjacent cells with an offset of -1, -1 to 1, 1. I don't know how I move over here, so I might just put this in the code.
Over at the very bottom. To the bottom of the black box.
Oh, there we go. So it goes from an offset of from the cell you're on, an offset of -1, -1 to 1, 1. That gets every cell around the one you're on. So we've got a little for loop for that. And if it's gray, here's my if it's gray command, then uncover that cell too. I don't know about you guys. This in and of itself would have taken me an easy few hours to write. To get it. Do what?
It seemed like the hardest step of the whole project.
Oh yeah, I think so. So this is the uncover cells routine and the target. And then I didn't write that I wanted to be called from another routine, but this is where I'm going to go to my double click event before double click. See, there's no before click. That's what it was. It was just change. There's not a before single click. So I did before double click. And I'm also going to cancel that because what it was doing when that fell through is it would do it, but also put you in editing mode for that cell. Okay, so that's done.
I think you want to cancel it go through there.
Oops. Okay, what's going on? What has happened here?
I don't think you can uncover cell at the top.
Do what?
I don't think you added the uncover cell at the very top of the name.
So that I don't have to add. No, it should be just setting up the game though.
Other section.
Oh, you know what?
In your prompts, you never told it that you were kind of resetting.
To clear the cells, I didn't.
And I realized adding the impact the response stage.
I didn't know that
I've been
either.
copying and pasting, change that code up there and do this. That's really cool.
Me too. I learned something about things.
Okay, clear contents of cells and last time, 8th time's a charm. This is actually good though because you're seeing like the little teeny tweaks you have to make, but it's not horrible.
I've actually gotten feedback from my students that they enjoy seeing the troubleshooting during class so you can see like what errors you would get and your approach to fixing the errors.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like, instead of editing that prompt, you had said change the setup routine to, would it have given you the same code it would do otherwise?
It would,
Or differently?
I think it would do it slightly differently. But it would do the same result. I mean, you could just say at the but you say if you know the name of the routine, that's one of the things I was going to show. Is I could have said at the bottom, modify the setup routine to clear all the cells. But then if you do that a lot, then they kind of get disjointed. So the editing the previous prompt that's something I learned doing this project too. So,
Change the macro name.
what did I do?
It changed the macro name.
Oh wow.
Not the little things I need so much.
Oh, there you go. It seemed to me that more square this time too.
There's that thing where I clicked a blank and it went out and it pulled every cell to make this thing surrounded by numbers. And now I can right click a bomb, uncover that. That's touching, so I know that's up there. Now it becomes a logic puzzle. And I could sit here and play this for 30 minutes because I love this game.
You played this very quickly, Tom.
So this is the essence of the game here. I mean, that's basically the game. There's one or two more things I do want to do here, but you know, we had a couple little tweaks in there. We had a lot of back and forth conversation, but this was pretty fast to make this game, I think.
So one thing I would love to see now, when you first showed this to me, I was scratching my head thinking, okay, it's been like 15 years since I played Minesweeper. How do I play this? So it'd be really cool to say, write instructions that a fifth grader could understand to play this game, or whatever. I don't know how you want to say that.
Let's, do you want to take a crack at the prompt?
Yeah, just say, write instructions that so let's say a third grader could understand to play this game.
Sure, if you wanted to, you could embed it in a button as well, put in some little macro, some click on it, give instructions.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. That's a good idea. So now we'll have those pop them in a message box and tie them to a button. I'll put this at the bottom. Display instructions. Oops. True. Assign macro. Display instructions. There you go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
And that was completely on the fly. We just did that in like, what, 2 minutes? The last thing that I want to do is just set up the conditions to tell if you won or not. So from here, go to ChatGPT. And this is going to be called every time something happens. And I had to think about, again, how this is going to work. To your point earlier, David, how the computer's going to think about this. So I want to count the number of bombs in range Minesweeper, count the number of bombs in Minesweeper hidden. If the number of bombs in each range is not equal, then the status is game not over. Or else, are all the bombs in the same position in each range? So, you know, when I indicated a bomb in the main screen, is that in the same places on the other? And are all the cells in range Minesweeper that don't have bombs uncovered? That is, the cell color equals white. Then game over, you win. And that's kind of saying, like, in addition to identifying all the bombs, you had to have uncovered every single tile. So let's see what it does here. And without validating the code, I'm just going to copy it over and see what it does. Copy code. And check game status. Okay, so that's a function. So let me put that right here. Game over. You win. Something's not working there, and I don't think I want to debug this right now. There's a couple settings, so I might actually leave this part out of the video, or I'll fix it at the end there.
Cool. That, I mean, clearly, I don't know what you call it. A lot of that for you, which got you really far, and like you said, how many hours would it take you to build this out?
Let me bounce up to the other one that was working, and just show you the final result, because I did put a little more polish on the other version. So this one, this is that same function, and instead of just saying game not over, it's telling me how many bombs I found. 0 out of 25 found. Every time I click a bomb, it's gonna it should be resetting how many that is. No, that's not working too. I was just doing it on the double click. But the other thing you could do is you could put color codes on there. I had a conditional formatting on there. So that's it, guys. That's my project. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me and watching and having some input. You know, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes more. What are some other things you guys think about in watching this happen? Like, are you getting ideas of what you could do with it? Or, Dave, I think the next challenge is see if it can build lambdas for us.
Actually, I saw a comment on LinkedIn on that, where basically the person said it doesn't work with DBA code because there are so many samples of that out there. There are probably not a lot of Lambda samples live on the internet, so it's probably going to be shaky at that for now.
Okay.
6 months, a year, 2 years, and they'll be doing the same thing that humans are doing now. What's most interesting to me is the prompt you made to do the event macro. The first half of that text was programmer thought. I mean, you had to understand how Excel would respond to write that. The rest of it was the Minesweeper rule, but the first half you had to be a programmer to really kind of tackle that. And to your point as far as building this versus writing it, those macros, even if you developed this game before, if you were going to try and create this live during this event and write the macros, it still would have taken you an hour to rewrite something you had already written if you're trying to just write a thread.
Yeah.
So how much ChatGPT just superpowers someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I'm really impressed. Oh, go ahead, Mara.
I was just saying, I'm familiar with something I mentioned earlier, but like I really haven't spent time with DBA, but from my perspective, just the ability to like start to learn this and get introduced to this topic without feeling like intimidated or that sort of imposter syndrome. I mean, it's amazing for that, right? Like if I wanted it to have even more extensive applications, I could ask it for that. Like as a way of getting introduced to this, it's such a great way of doing it, and it's fun. Like this is such a fun project.
Well, Monica and I have already kind of kicked around an idea of rebuilding another game from the 80s too that we think we could do. So,
yeah, look out for Chips Challenge if you've heard of that one.
We're really impressed with this because me and a few other guys played around with doing some simple tests like this. Like we were trying to build some tools to help you understand your workbook, for example, like list all the name ranges or just, basic stuff like that. And this was, I think, back in October, November, and I don't know if something, it learned more or what, but we were getting a lot of errors in the code where it was like calling properties that didn't exist and just really bad things. I mean, they were easy to troubleshoot because you get an error and go fix it, but this is pretty impressive that you hardly got any errors at all.
and I tweaked a little bit. There really weren't very many in the beginning either. It does come back, and this is where I want people who are learning ChatGPT to understand is that you still kind of have to have the idea and the plan and the vision of what you want to do. And then Chat just does the basic work for you. And you can just tweak little things as you go. When I was thinking of doing this myself, I kind of had the same steps in my mind of how I would approach the project. Let me set up the game board first, then let me hide the bombs, and let me count the numbers, and then turn your eyes to the gameplay. How's that going to work?
Yeah, that's really cool. It does make me start to imagine thinking through a customer solution that we provided and how I would approach that. Because, obviously, in Minesweeper, there's no stakes, right? When you're delivering something to a customer, there's a lot higher stakes.
Oh, yeah.
I think you can certainly leverage, to give you that jump start and just write a bunch of the code. You have to really be careful making sure it's doing the right thing. But don't take a shortcut at that point. But at least you can, get started faster, which we were talking earlier about just getting started.
Yeah. And the last thing to bounce off that point that I liked was that, here's my screen here, and I'm basically just filling in values, and this is colored, even though it looks like a tile. And remember that one piece of code where I said, grab the corresponding cell from the Minesweeper hidden range and put it back on the Minesweeper range. I didn't even have to get really specific with that. So some of those things it does really, really well. All right, guys. Well, if there's no more final thoughts, I think we can wrap up. Again, I really appreciate you guys coming out, and thank you guys for coming.